Aaron Hernandez's double murder, 2012. Aaron Hernandez was a rising star tight end for the New England Patriots, living the American dream with a $40 million contract. But behind the stadium lights, he was allegedly living a double life that would end in one of the most shocking criminal cases in sports history. In July 2012, Hernandez allegedly gunned down Daniel D'Abreu and Safiro Furtado outside a Boston nightclub over a spilled drink. The execution-style shooting was cold-blooded. Hernandez allegedly pulled up alongside their vehicle at a red light and opened fire with a .38 caliber revolver, hitting both men multiple times. Witnesses described a silver SUV fleeing the scene, and the investigation would later connect that vehicle to Hernandez. While he was never formally charged with these murders during his playing career, the shadow of this night would haunt him. The brutality of the crime, two innocent men murdered over a perceived slight, showed a capacity for violence that shocked even seasoned investigators. Years later, after Hernandez was already serving life for the murder of Odin Lloyd, he was tried for these double murders in 2017. Though he was acquitted, the details revealed in court painted a terrifying picture of a man capable of extreme violence while simultaneously catching touchdown passes on Sunday afternoons. Hernandez would take his own life in prison just days after the acquittal, leaving behind questions that will never be answered. The dark reality that a beloved NFL player could potentially lead such a violent secret life remains one of the league's most disturbing chapters. Ray Caruth's murder-for-hire plot, 1999. Ray Caruth was a first-round draft pick for the Carolina Panthers, a promising wide receiver with everything to lose. When his girlfriend Cherika Adams became pregnant with his child, Caruth allegedly decided murder was preferable to child support. On November 16, 1999, Caruth orchestrated an ambush that would shock the nation. He drove Adams to a movie, then blocked her car with his vehicle while an accomplice pulled up and fired 4 shots into her car. Adams, 8 months pregnant, managed to call 911 and identify Caruth before losing consciousness. The premeditation was chilling. Caruth had allegedly recruited multiple people for the hit, discussing payment and logistics. Adams was rushed to the hospital, where doctors performed an emergency C-section, delivering their son Chancellor before Adams died from her wounds. The baby survived but was born with cerebral palsy due to oxygen deprivation during the attack. Caruth fled, triggering a massive manhunt that ended when he was found hiding in the trunk of a car outside a motel in Tennessee. Caruth was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and sentenced to nearly 19 years in prison. Chancellor was raised by his grandmother, Sandra Adams, who turned down Caruth's offer of financial support after his release. The calculated nature of hiring hitmen to murder the mother of his unborn child represents a level of depravity that transcends sports tragedy. Caruth's release in 2018 reignited public outrage, a reminder that some crimes leave wounds that never fully heal. O.J. Simpson murders, 1994. O.J. Simpson wasn't just an NFL legend, he was American royalty, a Heisman Trophy winner, Hall of Fame running back, and beloved celebrity. The night of June 12, 1994, shattered that image forever when his ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman were brutally murdered. The crime scene was horrific beyond what most Americans could comprehend. Nicole was nearly decapitated, stabbed multiple times in a frenzied attack that left blood pooled on her doorstep. Goldman, who had simply stopped by to return glasses, fought for his life but was overpowered and killed. The brutality suggested rage and intimate violence. A trail of blood led from the scene to Simpson's Bronco and his Rockingham estate, where a bloody glove was found. Despite overwhelming physical evidence, including Simpson's blood at the scene, the victim's blood in his vehicle, and his cuts and bruises, the trial became a media circus that divided America along racial lines. The infamous low-speed chase in the white Bronco captivated 95 million viewers, a surreal moment as a national hero fled from police. Simpson's acquittal in 1995 remains one of the most controversial verdicts in American history. He was later found liable in civil court and ordered to pay $33.5 million to the victims' families. The case revealed ugly truths about domestic violence, celebrity privilege, and the justice system. Simpson's fall from grace was complete, and even his later conviction for armed robbery seemed like karma delayed. The murders remain officially unsolved in criminal court, a dark stain on the NFL's Golden Boy era that no documentary can fully capture the horror of. Jovan Belcher murder-suicide, 2012. Jovan Belcher was a linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs, an undrafted success story who had worked his way onto an NFL roster through determination. On the morning of December 1st, 2012, he committed an act that would force the league to confront uncomfortable questions about brain injuries and domestic violence. Belcher shot and killed his girlfriend, Cassandra Perkins, in their home while their 3-month-old daughter was present. He fired 9 shots, ensuring there would be no survival, then drove to Arrowhead Stadium. In the parking lot, He thanked general manager Scott Pioli and head coach Romeo Crennel for everything they'd done for him, then walked a short distance away, got on his knees, and shot himself in the head as they watched helplessly. The juxtaposition was haunting, a man thanking his coaches seconds before ending his own life. Investigators found a history of alcohol abuse, relationship problems, and concerning behavior in the weeks before the tragedy. The murder weapon was one of several firearms Belcher owned, legally purchased despite red flags. The tragedy sparked intense debate about CTE, concussions, and the NFL's responsibility to players' mental health. Belcher's brain was later examined and showed signs of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, though the extent of its role in his actions remains debated. The Chiefs played their scheduled game the next day, a controversial decision that highlighted the NFL's show-must-go-on mentality. Perkins' mother was left to raise their daughter, and the league was left with yet another dark reminder that the violence on the field sometimes spills into real life in unthinkable ways. Darren Sharper's serial rape spree. 2011. Darren Sharper was a 5-time Pro Bowl safety and Super Bowl champion who transitioned into a successful broadcasting career after retirement. Behind the charm and million-dollar smile lurked a predator who spent years drugging and raping women across multiple states. Sharper's method was calculated and cruel. He would meet women at clubs or parties, slip sedatives into their drinks, and assault them while they were unconscious. The scope was staggering. He was eventually charged with drugging and sexually assaulting at least 16 women in Arizona, California, Nevada, and Louisiana between 2011 and 2014. Investigators believe there were far more victims who never came forward. He targeted vulnerable women, sometimes working with accomplices to transport victims between locations. The drugs he used, zolpidem and other sedatives, left victims with fragmented memories, making prosecution initially difficult. Many victims didn't realize they'd been assaulted until physical evidence or toxicology reports revealed the truth. Sharper pleaded guilty or no contest to multiple charges and received an 18-year federal prison sentence in 2016, with additional state sentences running concurrently. The case revealed how a famous athlete could weaponize his celebrity status to gain victims' trust before destroying their lives. Sharper went from NFL Network analyst to federal prisoner, his Hall of Fame caliber career permanently tarnished. The systematic nature of his crimes, planned, repeated, spanning years, represents one of the most disturbing criminal cases in sports history, far too dark for any mainstream documentary to fully explore. Lawrence Phillips's domestic violence and murder, 2015. Lawrence Phillips was supposed to be a savior running back, drafted 6th overall by the St. Louis Rams in 1996. Instead, his NFL career was a short spiral of violence that ended with him accused of the most heinous crime imaginable. Phillips had a history of domestic violence dating back to college, when he dragged his girlfriend down a flight of stairs. The incidents continued throughout his NFL career: assaults on women, fights with teammates, and erratic behavior that got him cut from multiple teams. By 2005, he was out of football entirely, his potential wasted. But the violence didn't stop. It escalated. In 2015, while already serving time in California State Prison for assault, Phillips was accused of killing his cellmate, 37-year-old Damian Soward. Prison officials said Phillips strangled Soward in their cell, though the motive remained unclear. The brutality of choking the life out of another human being in an enclosed space spoke to Phillips's capacity for sustained violence. Phillips was charged with first-degree murder and faced the death penalty. Before he could stand trial, on January 13, 2016, Phillips was found dead in his cell, an apparent suicide by hanging. His death ended any chance of answers about why his life took such a dark turn. Some pointed to a troubled childhood in foster care. Others saw a pattern of choosing violence. The tragic arc from Heisman candidate to convicted murderer dead in a cell represents one of the NFL's most complete falls from grace. The league rarely speaks of Phillips now, his name erased from highlight reels, a cautionary tale too disturbing to examine closely. Robert Rozier's cult murders, 1984. Robert Rozier played defensive end for the St. Louis Cardinals in the early 1980s, but his NFL career lasted just one season. What came after his football days ended would shock even the most hardened crime investigators. Rozier became involved with a black supremacist cult called the Brotherhood, led by Hulon Mitchell Jr., who called himself Yahweh Ben Yahweh. The group believed in violent retribution against white people and required members to kill a white devil as proof of loyalty. Rozier participated in at least 7 murders between 1984 and 1986, including slashing victims' throats and ears as trophies to present to the cult leader. The killings were ritualistic and brutal. Rozier later testified that he felt nothing while committing them, completely indoctrinated into the cult's ideology. Victims were often homeless people, targeted because they were vulnerable, and their disappearances wouldn't immediately trigger investigations. The randomness made the crimes even more terrifying. Rozier was arrested in 1986 and initially faced multiple murder charges. In exchange for testifying against the cult leader and other members, he received a plea deal serving only 10 years for his role in multiple murders. He entered witness protection and was given a new identity, a controversial decision that enraged victims' families. Years later, Rozier was again arrested under his new name for check fraud, violating his witness protection agreement. He died in 2011, having lived far longer than his victims. The story of an NFL player becoming a serial killer for a cult is so bizarre and disturbing that it sounds like fiction, yet it remains a horrifying chapter in the league's history that few remember. Eric Naposki's murder-for-hire conspiracy, 1994. Eric Naposki was a linebacker who played for the New England Patriots and Indianapolis Colts, a solid if unspectacular NFL career. But in 1994, he became involved in a murder plot straight out of a noir film, complete with a femme fatale, insurance money, and a cold-blooded execution. Naposki was romantically involved with Nanette Packard Johnston, a former model who was simultaneously dating wealthy businessman Bill McLaughlin. What Naposki allegedly didn't know or chose to ignore was that Johnston was scheming to murder McLaughlin for his money. On December 15, 1994, someone entered McLaughlin's home and shot him 6 times, killing him in front of his family. The killer knew the security code and the layout of the house, suggesting inside knowledge. For years, the case went cold, but investigators never stopped suspecting Johnston and Naposki. Evidence showed Naposki's financial situation improved dramatically after the murder, and phone records placed him near the crime scene. In 2009, both were arrested and charged with murder. Prosecutors argued Naposki was the triggerman, while Johnston orchestrated the plot to inherit McLaughlin's fortune. Naposki was convicted of first-degree murder in 2012 and sentenced to life without parole, maintaining his innocence to this day. Johnston received the same sentence. The case revealed how greed and manipulation could turn a professional athlete into an alleged killer. The 15-year gap between crime and conviction gave Naposki years of freedom he didn't deserve. The cold calculation of shooting an unsuspecting man multiple times for money represents a darkness that Netflix's glossy documentaries rarely touch. Tommy Kane's wife murder, 1988. Tommy Kane was a promising running back and kick returner for the Seattle Seahawks, drafted in 1988 with hopes of a long career. Just months after his rookie season began, he committed an act that would end his NFL dreams and destroy multiple lives. In January 1988, during an argument at their home, Kane stabbed his wife Tina Marie 18 times, killing her in a frenzy of violence. The sheer number of wounds indicated rage beyond comprehension. This wasn't a single moment of anger, but sustained, repeated violence. Their young son was in the home at the time, a witness to his mother's murder at his father's hands. Kane fled the scene but was quickly apprehended by police. The brutality shocked the Seahawks organization and the broader NFL community. This was domestic violence taken to its ultimate, irreversible conclusion, and it happened to a player who had just achieved his lifelong dream. Kane was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 18 years in prison. He served his time and was released, but the Seahawks and the NFL essentially erased him from their records. The team never speaks of him. His brief career is a footnote overshadowed completely by his crime. Kane's son grew up without a mother, raised by relatives while his father sat in prison. The murder of Tina Marie Kane represents the deadly consequence of domestic violence, a crisis the NFL has struggled to address adequately. The league's history is littered with domestic violence incidents, but few ended as tragically and violently as this one, making it far too dark for mainstream sports documentaries. Kermit Alexander's Family Massacre, 1984. Kermit Alexander was a star cornerback who played 10 NFL seasons, known for his toughness and skill. But in 1984, he experienced a tragedy so horrific it defies comprehension. His family became victims of one of Los Angeles' most brutal, mistaken identity murders. On August 31, 1984, members of a Los Angeles street gang broke into Alexander's mother's home looking for a drug dealer. They found the wrong house. Instead of their intended target, they encountered Alexander's mother Ibora, his sister Dietra, and his 2 nephews, Damani and Damon, ages 13 and 8. The gang members opened fire, killing all 4 in a hail of bullets. The children were shot execution-style, begging for their lives before being killed. Ibora and Dietra tried to shield the boys but were gunned down. The scene was so gruesome that even veteran homicide detectives were traumatized. Alexander, who was in Los Angeles for a business meeting, rushed to the hospital only to learn his entire family had been murdered. The killers were eventually caught and convicted, receiving life sentences. But no punishment could undo the devastation. Alexander became a crusader against gang violence, channeling his grief into activism, but the loss hollowed him out. He's spoken publicly about survivor's guilt and the impossibility of moving on after such a tragedy. The randomness, being targeted because you lived at the wrong address, made it even more senseless. This wasn't about football or an NFL player's actions. It was about being touched by evil through sheer misfortune. The massacre of the Alexander family is too painful and dark, even for true crime documentaries, a reminder that tragedy sometimes finds innocent people for no reason at all. Philip Adams mass shooting, 2021. Philip Adams played 6 seasons as a defensive back for 6 different NFL teams, a journeyman career plagued by concussions. On April 7, 2021, he committed one of the most shocking mass murders in recent sports history, then took his own life. Adams drove to the home of Dr. Robert Leslie, a prominent physician in Rock Hill, South Carolina. He forced his way inside and opened fire, killing Dr. Leslie, his wife Barbara, and their 2 young grandchildren, Ada and Noah, ages 9 and 5. He then killed James Lewis, an HVAC technician working outside the home, before barricading himself in a bedroom and committing suicide. 5 people dead in minutes, including 2 children, for reasons that may never be fully understood. Investigators found no clear motive. Adams had been a patient of Dr. Leslie's, but there was no evidence of a dispute or malpractice. The randomness amplified the horror. After killing an entire family and an innocent worker, Adams shot himself in the head, ending the rampage. An autopsy revealed Adams had severe CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, with damage to his frontal lobes that controlled judgment and behavior. His father said Philip had been acting erratically, suffering from memory loss and personality changes. The NFL's concussion crisis has created many victims, but the Leslie family and James Lewis paid the ultimate price for Adams' deteriorating brain. The league acknowledged the CTE findings, but offered little beyond condolences. The mass murder of an entire family, including children, by a former NFL player, represents the darkest possible outcome of the sport's violence, when the hits on the field create monsters off it. No documentary will ever truly capture the terror of those final moments, or adequately explain how we let it happen. Which of these dark moments shocked you the most? If you found this video eye-opening, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on these tragic moments that the NFL would rather forget.